Millennial Pagan Podcast, the podcast that's bringing a voice to the growing number of millennial pagans in our brand of witchcraft, magic, practice, and worship. We're your hosts, Autumn Wolf
and Jera Stone, and we also have a couple of guests in the studio with us. We have Sprig and Phoenix.
Hi, guys.
How are you guys doing today?
Really great.
Yeah?
Beautiful. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
It's been a hectic week, but it's been great, actually.
Hasn't it?
Yeah, I've had some pretty positive experiences this week, so I'm happy.
It's been an interesting, actually, hectic week at work, and that's kind of been the main focus for my week, unfortunately. But had a nice big party here at the house last night, so I was able to just release a lot of that energy and relax most of the day today.
I bought a new car.
Well, lucky you.
Yeah. So today's episode, we have Sprig and Phoenix. Can you both say your names? That way our audience knows whose voice is whose.
I'm Sprig.
I'm Phoenix.
And we're asking both of these lovely ladies to join us today because we're discussing a pretty big issue that Jera and I don't really have firsthand experience with. I know some of you will say that we're actually a month late on this topic, but tackling this issue it's never the wrong time. It's never too late, too early. I think it's perfect timing. So what we're going to be talking about is LGBTQ issues in paganism. But of course, first, let's get to know our guests and see what your coming of witch stories are. So who wants to go first?
Okay, so I've been a witch for 3 years now, I think.
Okay, so what were your first experiences with coming to the craft, or what drew you to the craft?
Through living with Sprig, we were actually living with a old kooky kitchen witch. Her house was something straight out of Harry Potter, cobwebs and cats and chickens in the kitchen. Live ones. They would come in through the dog door.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, my chickens stay in the backyard.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
Books everywhere, altars everywhere. You know, it was very grungy witchy.
Ooh.
But it was charming, you know, if you have that inside of you, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Some people called her a hoarder, but...
Oh, well. So, what do you call your practice?
Well, I started as a solitary practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Old Scott Cunningham kind of did like a self-dedication, and that kind of started off my path and started, I guess, putting those psychic feelers out there. Like, you want more, you want to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I need community, I want mentors to show up. So I guess it was early forms of manifestation for me. And that kind of brought us to Jane Phoenix in more of a mentor capacity, and then just a proprietor of a store that we like. Pointed us towards Arizona Reclaiming, which I think is a similar story to a lot of us in the ACR community.
Yep, that's very true. And Jane Phoenix owns Dragon Star Books down in East Mesa. So, right. And yeah, she was the one that brought me into the group as well. So what kind of training have you received?
Almost a year ago, I was formally initiated into the fairy tradition of witchcraft, an American traditional witchcraft tradition. Kind of started up in the 80s in San Francisco, and the reclaiming tradition actually became an offshoot of the fairy tradition.
Right.
But they're still very much intertwined. It's just kind of different expressions of the same thing is how I describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Reclaiming is more outward activism, community, and the fairy is all the inward stuff, the unraveling, the putting back together, the staring into the mirror and of deep reflection and having to look at the ugly things. And because in fairy it's all like an infinity loop and it passes through different phases.
Right.
So you see some dark things about yourself, but it's all about self-knowledge and making yourself better and making everything around you better.
Right. And when I first met you both, then you were already a couple of months into your practice with us as a group. You told me some things about how it's already helped you at that point. Do you want to talk about how much of an amazing change that you felt because of connecting to that magic?
It's held me together through some rough times. It's been helping me. When I say staring into that black mirror, you know, it's not cliche. You know, it not only forces you to look at those things and take responsibility for them and do something about them, but it kind of brings them out through that process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you have skeletons in the closet, they kind of turn into zombies in your bedroom.
Right.
That's a good metaphor. I like that.
So for me personally, I've had a lot of rage issues from the past that have kind of come back up. So dealing with anger and mostly centered around anxiety. I have an anger response to anxiety if I'm feeling confused or frustrated or hungry, tired, etc. So that response, you know, those reactions is one thing, but also dealing with the anxiety in the first place, not letting things build up. You know, so the container building is very important in our tradition. The psychic container that holds all that background noise, you know, and whatever work we're doing, you know, capital W, but it doesn't have infinite capacity, you know,
Right.
or strength, you know, so building the container to make it bigger, but also make the walls stronger, but also dealing with learning proper throughput
Right.
so that it's not overflowing or running empty.
Right.
Are there any particular deities that you worship or work with?
Worship, not so much. I would say I have strong reverence for the guardians of fairy,
Mm-hmm.
the elemental archetypes, star goddess, which is eminent in all. And that's a common thread in both of our traditions. The idea that God is many and we are many, but also God is one and everything is one, everything is God. Star goddess, God herself. There's a lot of paradox in fairy, but it's helped me navigate paradoxical situations because there's a lot of those in real life that comes up. It's like, oh, I have, you know, X amount of things that I need to get done, but I only have so much time or energy or money or, you know, there's a lot of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. So I think understanding paradox itself and being comfortable with it just helps in life in general.
Right.
I think that's something that we as magical people we can hold two ideas, you know, science and, you know, oh, there's actually a fire spirit in the bonfire now, you know, or whatever.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So, Sprig, do you want to tell us your coming of witch story?
Sure. I was in junior high, and I was not quite Catholic. I had not been confirmed. It just was the roll of the dice. That's how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a tarot reading from my best friend, who was really cool, my best friend. I really valued her opinions, so like her sister doing something for me was a really cool thing. But it was moving because it gave me hope about the future in a time I felt really uncertain. So after that, for whatever reason, synchronicity, my sister brought home all of Silver Ravenwolf's books, and we were piling and peeling through them because they were not like anything we'd seen before. And they didn't really fit for me, but it really made me feel like, okay, I don't have to be cornered into this that I was born into, that I've been raised into. I can figure out where I fit. Because if there's this other thing I've never heard anything about, there's probably 800 other things that I've known nothing about. So how I came to fairy, though, was through Jane Phoenix at Dragonstar. And she has been integral to a lot of change in my life. Because I don't think that without her friendship and the inspiration to attend the group, that I would be alive today.
Right.
Some of the good that Reclaiming has done for me, more as a personal responsibility thing, is that I do not drink to hurt myself anymore. And it's a scary place to be in your 30s and not know where you fit in. But it was really amazing to find Reclaiming, and everything just, it fit. And it's really changed my life, and I'm working towards a new career now, and I was able to make it through a hard time with my dad passing and losing a friend, and I don't know that I'd be here without them. And the activism part about it is probably the biggest draw for me, that not only do you have a personal responsibility for yourself, but for other people's safety and wellness as well. So I have a responsibility to do what I can for plastic in the ocean or for kids locked in cages. I don't have an obligation to sit on my ass and do nothing while people are suffering. While I have a brand new computer and some people don't have electricity or live on $1 a day. And I have never been the person who's looked the other way. I can't. So finding other people who don't look the other way, and then Fairy, I see it more as instead of reclaiming being the activism portion, Fairy being the devotional part. So there's speaking out, so seeing God in other people, and then devotional, seeing God in yourself. So you asked Phoenix if she had any specific deities that she spends time with or venerates, or however you phrased it.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time with Hecate, and I think that's because I go through a lot of transitions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of different, I suppose, than what other people would imagine for the cloaked, hooded figure with a torch. But I kind of see it as like you're the earth going around the sun, and when you go behind the moon, the sun's not there anymore. It's gone. But you know it's there. And that's the idea that I get from being the light in the dark, the hope from Hecate. So with all the changes and the deaths and sadness, I find myself able to create new hope every day. And that's not something I had before. So that's my part in that.
That's absolutely beautiful. So do you consider your practice a religion?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a lifestyle.
Some people would say their practice is just a practice, or their religion is separate from their magical practice. So,
Right.
yeah,
And that's
that's...
certainly the case in reclaiming. We have a lot of people who are not traditionally in the West what we would think of as pagans.
Mhm.
We have people who are Hindu who come to our celebrations sometimes. And I mean, it is far out there, so it is a drive, but a lot of people who come from a lot of varying traditions end up together. And I think that's what's really beautiful about reclaiming as an outer court, is because you can show up and celebrate the Sabbats no matter what your background is or where you're coming from, as long as you have an open heart.
It plays nice with other traditions.
It does. I agree. So, do you both practice magic often, and what kind of magic do you practice?
Oh, every day. That's another thing that fairy's done, because this is my experience, but you can ask pretty much any fairy initiate that it pretty much begins with unraveling, like pulling out a sweater until it's just a pile of threads, and then you have to reknit it, because you can't just leave it that way.
It's no longer a
But
sweater.
in the process of that, you know, there's a new name given. There's a chance to bring things in and leave things behind. But for me, anyway, there's also been a melding of the worlds. There really isn't a separation between, you know, magical and mundane. There's all, you know, is sacred. You know, so a magical act that I do is, for example, if I'm the first one into the office, I'll put my hand on the light switch, you know, in our department. Holy Mother, in whom we live, move, and have our being. From you all things emerge, and unto you all things must return. Blessed be this day, and turn on the lights. And that's one example of how I try to leave the place better. You know, and pick up a piece of trash, but also watch my thought forms that I'm putting out, you know, in whatever space I'm in, because thoughts become forms. And I can make the place better physically, but also spiritually or emotionally, psychically. And that's just a way to make a contribution. Both of these traditions are very service related, I believe. Our work finds us, like Sprig was referring to. You know, we gave a ride up the road to a pregnant homeless woman, you know, from Circle K the other day. Just, you know, these situations like seek us out. It seems like, you know, it's like there was other people around, but I'm the one that she's calling out to for help. So openness is a really big part of it. When you're open to you see the patterns, no matter if you're in Circle or in Circle K.
So a lot of my magical practice is basically lighting incense, journaling, and swearing. There's a lot of crying. people say that spiritual practice is really beautiful, and there's a lot of fine garb and candles and cool colored fire and neat effects, but it's none of that. It's hard work, and the work, even if you don't want it, will find you, and it will keep telling you that it's there if you don't do it, which I think you've experienced before.
A lot, yes. Welcome to I'm not doing enough work. No, I agree.
So most of my magical practice is like that. Sometimes it's cleaning the whole house and good self-care. What you can do to make things better as they are, to find the good in everything, even when the day sucks, even when everything goes wrong, finding the good in it. Because otherwise you lose that little nugget of hope, before the sun reappears.
Right.
Hestia is one of our household deities, and we have a big altar in the front of our house to Hestia. But also sometimes I call the stove, the Hestia, because in every Greek temple the center was the fire, and the center was the Hestia. That's what they called it. There was no standalone temple to Hestia, because all Greek temples were Hestia's temples also. There's also that inner fire within us that must be tended. And that's one of the ways that helps me remember to do things like dishes and wipe down the stove. Not that Hestia necessarily demands it. Sometimes she does if we really neglect it.
Right.
But I feel her smile when I do. And it's a way to have that connection with other in the mundane. One of the quick things is we always have hot water on the stove, on low, on the back burner, a kettle. Whether we're home or not, 24 hours a day, we tend to it, we refill it, so it's almost like a modern day eternal flame, but also have that Hestia connection, because there's always that hot water available for drinks, or, would you like a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, or...
It's interesting because from a Celtic standpoint, I was always trained that if you're not using your stove or your hearth, you're supposed to have a candle lit on it, and that is for Bridget, and that is to maintain the flame of Bridget. And so that's interesting. There's that crossover. But tell us who Hestia was as far as a deity, or was it just this idea of the flame?
No, she very much was a literal, Greek deity. Passion, truth,
Household.
burns away. Yeah, just household. That is family,
Hearth.
center, hearth and home. That's
That's who she was.
But there's a lot of high magic that happens in the hearth and the home. And kitchen witches are not to be messed with.
You know that firsthand, don't you, Autumn?
I live with a kitchen witch.
Tomatoes stewed to oblivion. Anger tomatoes.
So now that we've learned a little bit about you guys, coming to yourselves, coming to your religion. Now we of course we have you both here because you two are in a relationship.
Yes.
And we kind of want to know a little bit more about what it entails being a part of the LGBTQ community inside of paganism, because it's not something that a lot of people I guess associate with it, but it's something that's there, and we want to talk specifically with you two because you, number one, you're a forefront for cute couples, if I can just say that.
Very true.
Very true.
Yes.
But also your walks, not just with your religion, but also your lifestyle, are beacons for other people. And I know that we when Autumn and I were talking about bringing you guys on, or about bringing somebody in the community who is LGBTQ, literally the first people that came to mind were you two. So how does being that how does being LGBTQ coincide with your paganism?
With my paganism,
Mm-hmm.
almost in the DNA of it, at least in the fairy tradition. It's a very clear tradition. We believe there's a divine male and female in all of us. One of our creation myths is the story of Star Goddess and Myria. In the beginning, there was nothing. And Star Goddess was alone and awesome in herself and saw her reflection in the deep black mirror of space and was enamored by it, by her reflection, fell in love with it, and it became form, it became Miria, the wonderful. And so she made love to this embodiment of her reflection, and through their love she became swollen with love, filled with it, and burst forth all of the planets and the spirits that gave birth to all the different worlds. That in that great movement, Miria was swept away, and as she moved out from Star Goddess, she became gradually more masculine. First, she became the Blue God, kind of a androgynous cherub that that the peacock angel sometimes he is referred to, or the Sky Father, and then he became the Green God, covered in vines, and then he finally became the Horned One, who forever seeks to return in love. So Star Goddess, because all was created in love, all seeks to return. So that's kind of at the core of our religion, kind of this lesbian, transgender, in between, part, because it all started with Star Goddess in the first place. So it's a lot of metaphor, for what's within.
But one thing's at the basis of the entire story: love.
Yeah.
And you can almost look at it from a feminist standpoint as being even non-gendered, because if you look at how in language we keep using the masculine, well, a lot of feminism is turning that around and saying, well, let's use the feminism as the dominant first, and therefore if we take gender out of that equation, it could be a genderless love that created it all and therefore open to all.
I find that for the most part, I've not had to experience any naysaying from any pagans I've come across. Initially, I was a solitary practitioner because I was alone, a teenager in my bedroom, on my nightstand, still in my bedroom. And I was a solitary until 2 years ago. So it's not been a long amount of time with people. However, the whole experience does not seem inundated with the sort of disdain that I'd probably receive elsewhere, in the church of my birth, any of that. I don't know that other communities would be as accepting. I've been to Pagan Pride, though, and I've never had a problem there. Everybody's been very open. How it's affected me personally, I don't think it has. I don't think that it's something that has influenced any part of my interaction with paganism in general or other pagans.
So you never had a problem with, they always seem to go hand in hand, like they just fit. There was no question about either.
I think people just kind of accept you as you are, which is not something I've experienced before. I spent a lot of my formative years in the Midwest, and a number of people with the right inflection, interesting has a whole different meaning. So, you get used to the layers that people use to protect their biases. And you become so used to them that when other people use the wrong inflection, you're like, is that really interesting? Or, did you want to alter your inflection there? Nobody knows what I'm talking about because, we're Phoenix now.
Yeah.
I think it's important to draw a distinction between fertility traditions and ecstatic traditions.
Right.
The reclaiming principles of unity specifically talk about the difference between the two, which you can find on reclaiming.org. Both fairy and reclaiming are very much an ecstatic tradition. We sometimes joke that we're the Pentecostals of paganism.
We're the black sheep, yeah.
Because we don't focus so much on that, dichotomy of male and female, god and goddess cycle, of conception and swelling and birthing and growing and dying. And we do play with those cycles a lot, or bits of them, but in a static way. So it's more about the energy that we're raising within us and within our circles. It's more about the work that we do, the things that we're manifesting. and the things that we're cultivating within ourselves. We get into the stories of the gods and goddesses, from all different pantheons, but we use them as tools to create change within our priestesses.
But we do play with those themes when we're talking about birth or motherhood or maidenhood. Has it ever come to a point where you've had issue or felt uncomfortable or couldn't connect with those symbols or that usage?
I found myself in an interesting position last Sabbath. I was not able to attend the planning, and I was tending, I don't really know, it's a vagina station.
Right.
And I was helping people culminate their passion, I guess is how I can tie that in euphemism-wise. And that was an uncomfortable position for me. But what I know from my experience is that being uncomfortable in that moment allowed me to grow a lot. And it was weird, but it definitely wasn't that weird. And I was so glad to be part of the magic that we did make. So besides that, because that's a little far for me, like full on vagina. But yeah.
And if you wanted to hear my thoughts on that one, we did a mini-sode on that.
Yeah.
Do you have any...
About the vagina tents?
Oh, actually. We did a mini-sode because I actually had a terrible experience there. I became the conduit of everyone's negative feelings and discomfort.
Oh, don't do that.
Yeah, and no, that's why if you noticed, I started getting snippy and frustrating. I couldn't be part of growing the cone. It was absolutely terrible because I was so jealous while you guys were enjoying the growing of the cone and the dancing around the fire because I was like, that is everything we are, and I am stuck over here being pissed off about nothing.
It was very interesting, especially those that noticed.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'm sorry for snipping at you.
No, it's fine.
I know, but
it's interesting how people have different experiences, though. Because I mean, I went home without my dress, so I mean, obviously it was a good ritual when you can't. Yeah, it did end up home with us.
Okay, that's good.
Like, I had to go to the car in my scarf and my bra. So, I mean, that's how it was for me. Uncomfortable, but, like, good, too. And I'm it's interesting.
It was just so weird because it was like I was sitting next to both of you. I was sitting next to Jera and Sunshine. And I am ecstatic about how both of y'all's relationships are going. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I love all of these people. This is great. This is fun. And suddenly I was pissed off about boobs. I did not know why. I'm like, I have a pair. I'm fine with seeing other people's pair. Why are they jiggling and pissing me off? I'm sorry. This is not what the episode's about, but that was my experience.
And if you guys want to hear about that experience, make sure you join our Patreon page.
Mini-sode.
Yes.
Exclusive mini-sode. Anyway, sorry.
Just had to do that plug because it seemed to fit right there.
It was appropriate. Yes, I agree. So, caveat. Do you want to talk about maybe, since we already talked about your coming of witch, how you found out about this part of yourselves or what your actual expression is?
So, yeah, it's really interesting for me because as it was, I didn't really identify at all as anything. I am not straight, not gay, not in between. It didn't matter.
Right.
I dated girls. I slept with girls. I dated guys. I slept with guys. Kind of went back and forth. So maybe I was bi. I didn't really know. There was a lot of self-discovery that doesn't make sense. This is a millennial. We have screens in front of us all the time. So it's hard to get in connect to who you really are. So I was doing all these things anyways, happy. Then I met Phoenix. And everything's been more clear. I had a little identity crisis and was trying to figure things out because I had just married a man and I did not understand where I fit into this. I thought I was being evicted. So 3 months after we got married, which don't be angry with her. It was a bombshell for her too. But it was about comfort. And I can't actually, as like a sort of catharsis, something that felt good. I came out as gay on Facebook because that felt right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a gay friend immediately shoot me down and tell me that I wasn't a real gay. That it doesn't really work that way. You don't just, have a partner who's suddenly changing their gender and you're gay now. It doesn't work that way. And I felt like this, I have all this history being a queer person, being a little weird. My clothes have always looked different. I'm a little kooky. I know that. But to be cut off immediately because she was angry, because I wanted to join her club and I didn't meet her qualifications. And that's really so angry and stressful. And nobody should be that angry and stressful.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So
And
I blocked her.
good.
So that's taken care of, because junior high friends that aren't very nice to you, they don't have to stay on your Facebook page.
Isn't that a beautiful thing? To not have to care about those people
yeah, self-care
anymore?
housekeeping.
There is an unfriend and a block button on Facebook.
There's an
it's
unfollow,
beautiful.
too.
Unfollow,
Yeah.
yep.
And I suggest people go and exercise those as soon as you feel comfortable.
Because Facebook
Great
isn't
for
real life.
in-laws.
It's just,
Yeah,
it's
you
a
can just
social media.
unfollow. They think you're still friends. It's fine. If they
Check
tag
in
you,
for
you
the
can still see
pictures.
stuff.
It's
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So I'll let
So
Phoenix tell her
the
story.
context that Sprig alluded to at the end there, I'm a assigned male at birth person, a trans woman, and when we met, I was still there was signs as far back as any time period I pick. I can see the clues or the cracks in the shell or whatever you want to.
20/20 vision.
Yeah, exactly. Hindsight. But I hadn't quite gotten there when I met Sprig. Things were very tumultuous at that time. I was raised Christian for 23 years.
I hear you on that point.
Solid believer, I was very strong with my faith for a very long time, but I didn't have that inner experience really because it was different than what I could present. Even in private, I thought, because, God was watching. And I had to be what God made me, and that was, a young man. So I went about life that way and got married, had 2 boys, but things didn't go well relationship-wise. The things that I've since unraveled, are still very much strong coping mechanisms and, mixed with the biological things that were wrong. Because we have found out that there are biological links to people like me. There are developmental causes, that they can trace, to certain hormone pushes that happen in the womb, different times, for example. The chromosomes kind of get things going, but a great majority of our functions in life, from birth on, is really hormone driven. The pituitary gland and all the different hormones that cause different things to do different things. So things were just very weird for me. I was very awkward, for the first 2 decades of my life. Very shy, spent a lot of time alone. We grew up rural in Sunflower, Arizona. My dad was a police officer. He's OCD, he has PTSD. My mom's a bipolar hairdresser, cosmetologist.
Some of the best ones are.
Sometimes you have to be.
And,
Highlights and lowlights.
That was beautiful.
narcissistic to a degree and very selfish.
Blissfully unaware.
Very young, mentally, I think. Very self-centered. But we had a falling out around the time that Sprig's father passed away. And I didn't see my parents for a year. I just had lunch with them a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's great.
For the first time in a year. And they missed me.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a lot.
No, you're allowed to. If any listeners complain, you can complain in your own heads. Or in your own cars, or wherever you're listening. Do not send me messages.
So I was actually working for a church. I was the technical director. I was in charge of all the AV things started getting really, really stressful there because I had all these bad coping mechanisms. I still have a lot of them, but I had a lot of challenges at home that I couldn't really deal with. Or the ways that we were both raised, to handle conflict were very at odds with each other, and it kind of created these co-creating rage cycles.
Right.
And eventually she left me, and I went to my sister's house, or my brother-in-law's house, who was just a good friend at the time from high school. But he's since gotten together with my sister. He's my brother-in-law now.
Ah.
Yeah, so my best friend from high school is now my
Now
brother-in-law.
your brother.
Yeah.
It's nice how that works out.
Yeah.
So they had an open room and let me stay, so I got things figured out. And, we'd already separated a few times,
Mm-hmm.
At this point, and this was kind of the end, I think, for both of us.
Right.
So she actually filed divorce papers and went through that whole deal, and sold the house and everything. And December 2012, it was about sometime in December, I think, 2012, I met Sprig. And the first night we actually saw each other in person, we kind of walked into each other's lives and just never really parted.
Zing.
Yeah, I was still hadn't figured things out yet. I was still
Right.
presenting male. So things were different when we met, And we were together for like a year, exactly a year. We got married on our anniversary
Aw.
in Mesa, Full Justice Court. My sister and her boyfriend at the time.
Not the brother-in-law.
Not my best friend from high school.
No.
It hadn't happened yet. But anyway, my sister and her boyfriend at the time came to the courthouse and were our witnesses, and I went to dinner afterwards. And a few months later,
What were you doing when the epiphany occurred?
well, again, it was little chips in the wall,
Right.
Over a very long time. And my life changed a lot, but even before then, even before I transitioned gender-wise,
Right.
I completely turned my back on my religion, my faith,
Right.
and I, told God off and, said some really horrible things to Jesus.
We've all done that. Being from a Christian background as well, it's I kind of know where you're coming from on that end, because I've done that.
It was like a breakup.
Yeah,
it was like a bad breakup.
Yeah,
Right.
With my deity of 23 years.
Right.
yeah, and because it's one of those, why did you put me through this? Why, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I see where you're coming from on that.
So what was happening when you turned to Sprig and he said, "Hey, honey, I love
I
you."
was playing video games.
Oh.
This was not expected. I got a, honey, would you come sit on the couch? And I'm like, I'm 3 feet away from the couch. Why do I need to sit on the couch?
And I said,
Are we breaking up?
You said that while in game.
Yeah.
Like a true nerd.
Well,
with
yeah.
love.
Well, no,
So
it wasn't
we-
like over the chat.
we got off the
of
game.
our
We were in
time.
the same room
Yeah.
playing a
Can
game
we
together.
talk? And I was
Yeah.
like, this is not good. What did I do? I'm going to think about the last 48 hours. It has to be somewhere in there. Got to figure it out. I've got like
That
30 seconds.
that
I was
one
like,
cut-
white and
prepare my-
like sweating a little
Yeah,
bit.
it was-
She
it
could
was
tell that
nerve-wracking.
this was important.
Yeah.
Oh, on top of everything, though, I like to say that we were the first gay marriage in Arizona, because gay marriage was not legal at this time, and it was
Right.
This
not
was
legal
before.
when she came
This
out.
was prior to Oberger
So-
v. Hodges, and
We got married on New Year's Eve of 2013.
Mhm.
So it was not until April of 2014 that marriage equality happened. So I was very nervous too, because I wasn't sure where that put me in the world.
Right.
and it was also
legally
about that
even.
time.
Right.
that-
Of course.
It's not comfortable to be in a place that you're not wanted,
Right.
especially when the laws aren't made to protect you.
Right. That would make it a difficult legal situation. I agree. I do want to say one of the deciding factors about asking you guys was because I feel being able to get through that together and still being together and just you both exude the love to each other that you do, and you have great communication from what I see and can handle each other's demons. I was like, you guys will be able to communicate to and be
So
that.
I'd
the
always been
Mercury
able
shade
to-
is real right now, though.
Mm.
The Mercury shade is real.
Yeah.
I was always able to share with each other,
Mhm.
you know, even before the Great Reckoning.
I won't say reckoning. Rebirth.
Yeah, there you go. Phoenix.
I thought that's what the point of the name Phoenix was coming of yourself.
It's so
and
much
being
more
so
mundane
beautiful.
than that.
Oh.
Yeah.
I had these glamorous, beautiful
Oh,
images
no,
in
it
my
keep
head.
fits me well, and I'm grateful
yes.
to the Fae, you know, for giving it to me. But the story of that is interesting for another time.
For another time, yes. Of course.
So we sat down, you know, being able to share. We've worked through some deep things together, you know, in our year together, you know, before we even got married, and several months into our new marriage. And so she was like, okay, you know, what's up? And we sit down and I take a big, deep breath, and it's like, you remember that thing you said a few weeks ago? And a few weeks ago, we were probably drinking beer and having a good time watching, you know, something, Game of Thrones or something. Just off the cuff, Sprig says, you know, I would love you even if you didn't have a penis. Just because we were so comfortable together,
You
you know,
have
on
no
a soul
idea
level.
how innocuous little things that you say are.
Yeah. And I don't know if she saw signs or something, but she just said that, and it stuck in my head for a few weeks. And it's
You
like,
let it turn on.
I had
Yeah.
forgotten about it. It was one of those
Just-
off the cuff
Yeah.
type of comments, and I did not retain it. It was not recorded.
It was one of those off the cuff truths.
Right.
Um,
And you said to that,
Oh, I cried for like 3 days.
oh,
Like I'd wake up and I'd
Uh-huh.
cry, and then I'd have breakfast and I'd cry. It was I could not process things. It
Right.
happened so suddenly, and I was, I guess, in shock. Like
mm-hmm.
I did not know how things were anymore.
That is
my
very-
my
yeah.
life had been upturned.
she didn't know if I was going to leave her, if
I
wanted a
didn't
husband,
know
or...
if my marriage was valid. I didn't know if I was going to jail.
Mhm.
I did not know much about the community because, like I said,
Yeah.
my background is that I never had to identify at all.
Right.
I was just
Mhm.
there, and it was okay that I wore t-shirts. It's okay that I wear a dress. It's okay that I wear jeans. I can wear sandals or I can wear combat boots. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's never mattered. So it's really hard when you have to figure out who you are all of a sudden. These things change, and the things were happening with profiling. Our PIO is profiling Latinos, and it can literally happen to anybody.
Mhm.
Less that I be next if I not say anything. And it's stressful to be closeted the whole time that you're a human.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm still not out to my family.
Mhm.
I post all kinds of witchy memes. Like they've got to know, but we've not had the talk.
Right.
We had a talk, hey mom, I'm an atheist. And she pulled funding for my wedding and wouldn't talk to me for 6 months.
Wow.
So it's just not necessary. I figured atheist was better than I'm, practicing witchcraft and becoming a lesbian. That's not what a good Catholic mom wanted to hear, probably. So, I was just like, okay, there isn't a God. And she was like, no, not hell no. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're going to take a short break and then dive into some more questions and talking about community, if you guys don't mind.
All right, we are back with Millennial Pagan Podcast, and of course we are here, of course, with Sprig and Phoenix still. So we've kind of talked a little bit about your coming of witch story, and then kind of your coming to yourself story. How do you feel that those two stories, how they intertwine, kind of bring you back to coming to yourself, coming to being who you are, and how everything is kind of reconciled?
Well, kind of as I mentioned previously there was a lot of hurt, and then in the past, a lot of damage there, spiritually, psychically. I consider myself a staunch atheist for a while, and there was damage there to my spirit, because I'm a spiritual being. And these things had no avenue, had no expression, so it wasn't good. I discovered paganism, witchcraft, kind of as a coming back to spirituality, in general, because I'd shunned everything. So it kind of allowed myself to, and this was, I think, even, had I come out yet? They blend together.
Mm-hmm. They're both coming out of the way.
Yeah.
One's coming out of the closet, the other one's
Right.
coming out of the broom closet.
There you go. So,
It's 2 walkthroughs.
Yeah.
but it was a kind of stepping back into that realm of faith. I am very Gnostic. I know that other exists. And that I know that fairies are real, and there's gods and goddesses and entities, but I don't shun any form of modern science or any empirical things. They're valid in different contexts. A central tenet of the fairy religion is the idea of 3 souls. We have a younger self, we have a talking self, and we have a higher self, or God self. And a big part of that whole unraveling, rebuilding cycles, because it is cyclical, you go back and revisit things, is learning about and caring for, building a relationship with Fetch, with younger self, because we believe that Fetch is the one that has the direct connection to divine, the God self. They communicate in ways that we can't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And so for our magic to have any potential to create change, we have to engage Fetch, we have to engage younger self in our rituals, in our manifestation work, whether that's rolling down a hill, or playing hopscotch, or eating a piece of peppermint candy and thinking about Christmas during a spell. It's waking up Fetch so that you can have that connection to divine. Because if talking self and Fetch are moving in the same direction, then great work can be done. Great self-work. And that's helped me reconcile my past and the pain and the hurt. I've welcomed Christ back into my pantheon. I was down in Bisbee for a work trip, and got done with the work, and there's this beautiful Catholic cathedral there, and an old wise friend that I met along the way told me that in times past you would honor the local gods of the land, whatever. If you were traveling, if you had business somewhere other than where you lived, you were stopping through somewhere, you would honor their gods. You'd go to their temple and do whatever is appropriate.
When in Rome.
Exactly.
Makes a lot more sense.
And it was, for good luck on your journey, because you're going through these different principalities and, spiritual realms of authority, that change. So I said, hey, why not? We'll go into this cathedral. And I was never Catholic, but they're linked. They're tropes, there. That's Jesus's house for a lot of people in the world. And I went to the Christ, and spoke with him, and kind of in peace. And on the way out, I saw fairies playing with the saints, in the glass. And it all kind of relates. I realized that the idea of the Trinity is kind of a metaphor for, that tripartite nature of our souls. Jesus was, kind of like that younger self of the Trinity that went down and felt, because Fetch feels. Fetch can see or think about a tree, but it's not the word tree.
Mm-hmm.
So Christ was how God felt, could interact with us on an emotional level. God the Father is talking self in the Trinity. He spoke to Moses. His voice always came down from heaven. No one could see his face. It was the word, the primal word that sparked creation.
Mm-hmm.
Om and Ong,
Mm-hmm.
potential and action. Star goddess in Myria, and then the Holy Spirit, the sacred dove, God's self, God's higher self, the executor of God's will. When God spoke and commanded something to happen, the Holy Spirit was the part of God that the executor of God's will.
Mm-hmm.
When God slayed the firstborn in Egypt, it was the Holy Spirit that went out and did that.
Mm-hmm.
When Jesus healed people, or fed the masses is the Holy Spirit that was the energy that carried those wills out. It's the same way in fairy. Our God self is the executor of our magical intent, our will. But the Bible said that no one can get to the Father, or higher self. There's some flexibility in the analogy, without the Son, without Jesus, and so there's that engagement with fetch, with the underself, with the emotional self to make magic happen.
And I think that's why I feel that you and I have a lot of a connection there because of our Christian walk when we were there, and then kind of the reconciliation with still having the Christian God, Jesus, in our pantheons. I think that's actually kind of one of the things that when we started talking kind of drew me to you. I was like, okay, I understand how that can be worked into my pagan walk. So, I mean, that from a personal standpoint, I do want to thank you for that.
I can also hear people out there thinking, oh, you're doing mental backflips. You're, holding, it's double think. It's double speak. You're saying, science is real. Oh, magic is real.
Magic is just what science hasn't decided and hasn't figured out how to answer.
Yeah.
But I can imagine someone out there thinking that, that it's that I'm practicing double speak or double think. Yes and no. And again, fairy is very paradoxical. But I think this aspect of this tradition cannot be understated because of its power to bring people together and bring different materials together to form, even for a moment, a tapestry. I can interact on a spiritual level with, a Christian or a Buddhist or a witch or an atheist, because of this ability to hold different ideas, different realities, because one moment we can be here in this room together, and the next moment we could be in fairy, we could be in ritual, and all of a sudden the fire turns blue, and talking self might say, oh, someone threw copper in the fire or something, but fetch says we're in the presence of divinity. And both are valid and both are true in fairy. I don't think it's double think. I think it's inclusion and openness to other ideas of other.
So how about you, Sprig? How did you find your center?
I think the culmination of my passion, if you will, it's been one of those difficult spiritual journeys again. It's not as beautiful and within the lines as I'd like. However, it's given me more awareness than I've ever had of myself. I don't know that I knew myself before, or else I wouldn't decide on what was exactly me. I didn't set the parameters. And I think it's important to do that sort of thing, to know who you are. And that understanding that I can change turmoil and trouble within myself, and that I can change the world outside of myself as well. That made me feel more whole and more capable, not helpless, not just some other weirdo sitting alone on their computer playing video games a bunch of hours a day. Like it's not, my motivations aren't the same anymore. I find myself doing more things that help than hurt, making better choices altogether, because I think about repercussions, the little things that I might affect. And I've realized that causes me tons more stress. There was a time when I did not look my experiences and the experiences that we're having globally, I didn't look it in the eyes. I didn't look myself in the eyes and say, hey, you're having this life. I'd like you to be here. That never happened. I was just desperately floating. What am I going to do? Is my life going to end? I have the ability to make change within myself and outside of myself. And I think that's the culmination for me, is that magic isn't something far away in a castle in the Greens of Ireland, where they have soft grass. But it's not something that I'm so much worried about anymore. I feel like I have sort of an outline, ways to go, directions forward, the hope that we talked about.
Right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. I know I kind of teased to our listeners a little bit more questions about community, but I think this was a beautiful first start at getting to know these two lovely people who obviously Jera and I care about a lot. And we think that this is an important conversation to start with, as we do with our coming of witch stories. So we're going to be asking both of you to come back, and we'll start diving in those hard topics. With that being said, it won't be our next episode, so I'm calling out to our listeners. Ask questions. Send us questions either through email, through our Facebook, through our Twitter. I already posted a prompt on both Twitter and Facebook. Be mindful that if your question isn't asked or if we don't respond right away, we do see, we do hear, we will ask something similar. We will try to touch on your topics. Be polite, be kind. These two lovely ladies are taking a lot of time out to help us understand what we need to talk about. Also, if there's somebody else whose voice needs to be heard, let us know. With that being said, we're going to turn now to our events coming up. We're going to have a new moon and a solar eclipse on the 12th of this month, both on the same day. Boy. Also, as we teased earlier, don't forget about our Patreon. We do have exclusive mini-sodes. If this relapses into possibly a third episode, it might just pop onto there just to maybe give a little bit more encouragement. We also want to thank Neat B for becoming a Patreon supporter. Thank you very much for that. If you're only finding us on our Facebook and Twitter posts, don't forget that Millennial Pagan Podcast is listenable on Podbean, iTunes, SoundCloud, and now
Spotify.
We're on Spotify, guys.
Yeah, which was the big one for us. We were waiting probably about 3, almost 4 weeks after I put in the request, and then finally, literally the day after our last show went live, we got the notification, hey, you're on Spotify now.
Oh my God.
So
yeah,
it's definitely a good blessing, because Spotify is one of the bigger places to listen to all these different podcasts, and it's of course downloadable to your phone. And this is not a sponsored show for Spotify, but personally, it's what I use to listen to all different types of podcasts and music. So if you guys haven't downloaded it yet, definitely go ahead, download it. You can take it with you wherever you go, just like with all of our listener apps as well.
And if you're looking for the podcast interaction, like I said, we are also on Twitter at Millennial Pagan, Facebook Millennial Pagan Podcast. Our email is millennialpaganpod@gmail.com. And again, please let us hear from you. Give us some things to ask that we haven't already. Questions, comments, concerns, topics, issues that have come up in your community, or in your area. And
as proof that we do listen, we do respond. We actually had a new listener and a new pagan write into our email, and we responded within a couple of days. But it was there, and it was I read through what you sent, Autumn, and that was good job on.
I'm glad you felt that way. She actually came. I do host the Pagan book talk. Phoenix Valley, and if you have any questions about that as well, please let me know. Jera, where can we find you on the interwebs?
Of course, on Twitter, just look for Jera Stone, Jerastone.
And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and WordPress. Facebook, I am Autumn Wolf, Wolf ending with an E. Twitter, I'm at Autumn Wolf with ending in E. WordPress, it is Iron Wolf Circle. And my email is autumn.ironwolf@gmail.com. You can also email me specifically if you don't want Jera reading it, but he will eventually see it.
I gotta keep up to speed with everything that's going on.
Yeah, we constantly talk.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not overbearing. Anyway.
No, not yet.
If you guys have any questions for the two of us, feel free to reach out to these lovely two people.
Of course, we'll pass those on.
I know the MPP tries to stay non-tradition specific, but if you have any questions or are interested in reclaiming tradition or the fairy tradition or the work that we do in the world, also reach out and we can get together.
We'll definitely follow that through.
So from all of us here at Millennial Pagan Podcast, merry meet,
merry part, and merry meet again.